Yeah, that's me. I bet you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. So this all started when I joined the Brackies Game Jam. A game jam is a competition where you have to try and make a game within a given time limit, in this case 1 week, based around a specific theme. This jam was hosted by the popular game dev channel Brackies, God rest their soul, and had the theme of Nothing Can Go Wrong. Yeah, I've got nothing. Alright, future me here, and my best idea is Among Us. No, I'm serious. I'm gonna make a game about maintaining a ship while something hunts you, like Among Us. Because if anything in the ship fails, then you'll just die. Or in other words, nothing can go wrong. I got started by making a simple top-down character controller, and immediately threw it away. Yeah, so I almost exclusively do top-down stuff, so I wanted to branch out. And I also don't want to be a total ripoff of the Funny Imposter game, so instead I'm going to be a total ripoff of the Funny 5-Bear game. Anyways, here's a basic office scene that follows your mouse. I then prettied it up and added a basic camera system. This works by just placing the corresponding sprite for a room behind this little monitor, and it works well enough. Next, I added enemies, which work almost identically to rooms, but they only show up on a single camera at a time. While this works, it's a little rough around the edges and doesn't feel great to use, so I made it so that the office will snap to the center whenever you're close enough to the camera to make it stable. And also added the CRT filter to the computer to match the retro future aesthetic of Alien, because God forbid I come up with something original for this game. Okay, we already have a problem. I don't know what the game is actually about. Like, obviously I have the basic idea, but I haven't outlined how the gameplay loop is going to work or what your actual goal is, so I better go fix that. After some brainstorming, here's the plan. An alien has crashed into your ship and is now running loose. You have to monitor it using the cameras and holding one of 2 vents closed if it gets too close in order to block it. Built on the cameras, each room will need to be repaired, which can only be done while you have it selected on cams and holding down a different button. Finally, you have limited oxygen and must hold down a button to refill it, and if it reaches 0, you die. This gives you multiple things to manage, but since each takes your full attention, you have to prioritize one at a time. This also differentiates itself from FNAF as it has a much larger emphasis on real-time actions, and progression is based on your actions, not the passage of time. With this new game plan, I started out with the easiest feature, oxygen. Here you can see your oxygen levels, which will slowly decrease. By holding down on the oxygen tank, it'll refill. Revolutionary game design, I know. Next up, I created an actual layout for the ship and art for each room, so that I had an actual sense of space to work with. Once this was done, I made a new system for buttons because the default Godot ones didn't work well with what I wanted, and these new ones fit the aesthetic much better. Finally, I moved the oxygen tank to the right side of the room and a map of the ship to the left, making the right useful for interactions and the left useful for information. This brings us to enemy AI, which thankfully was really easy because Scott Cawthon did most of the work already. That's an exaggeration, but not far off, as I just mimicked how AI in FNAF works. The basics are that every given interval of time, each AI will roll a movement opportunity, where they will roll a random number 1 to 20. If this number is larger than the AI's difficulty, nothing will happen. But if it isn't, the AI will move to the next room in their path. My game uses this system, however the enemy can backtrack in certain locations and features multiple random points of movement, so it'll be harder to track. And here you can see it working, but it can't actually do anything as it has no way of attacking you, so it just moves in a loop. To fix this, it's time to add vents. These are just sprites that will default to being open, but when you hold down the corresponding button, they will close. This is going to be the primary defense against the enemy, as they won't be able to get to you if you close the vent they're in. Now that those are out of the way, I updated the art for the oxygen bar and enemy, so that we can move on to progression. Here's the repair button, which will increase this bar, which corresponds to your completion of repairs. Each room has a separate repair level, so you have to navigate the cameras to complete each room. To further expand on this, rooms will start off with differing levels of repair. So rooms that are less useful for the camera to stay on will require more repairs, making you prioritize between intel and progression. Going along with progression, I added another button which displays the escape pod room, which will serve as the final room you need to repair it in order to complete the game. But since the enemy can't enter it, it's the least useful to have up on cams. Now that we have a form of progression, we actually need to add a death state. Now when the enemy has successful movement opportunity while in an open vent, it will trigger the jump scare animation. It really isn't great, but once I add sounds, it'll probably be better. Anyways, with the gameplay loop now somewhat in place, it was time to do some testing, and boy were there problems. Some adjustments I made after this test include different pathing so that the enemy won't just get caught in a loop, brightening the enemy's eyes on the cameras because they were too dark to see before, fixing the vents to actually work, and tweaks the oxygen so that it'll deplete and refill faster, making it more of a prevalent issue without being a hassle to fix. Another problem is that it's a little awkward when you die because the game just ends. Like, you can't restart or anything, so I should probably fix that. Now there's a main menu when you first start the game so that you don't just get sent to gameplay immediately. Using the same system, I added a menu for after you die, which allows you to restart from the last checkpoint, reset to main menu, or quit the game entirely. With this, the gameplay systems are essentially done, aside from progressing between different phases of the game, so now it's time to add sounds. Using SFXR, I quickly generated sounds for each action, and now the game has a lot more life to it. Oh, and the jump scare's a lot better now. And I can tell because it actually made me jump while testing. I'm not proud of this, but it happened. Anyways, there are a lot of things that I need to clean up. There's now a death animation for running out of oxygen, because I forgot to add that before. We also need progression, because right now you can't actually win the game, which brings me to the monitor. This is a screen on the wall which will display text for what the current objective is, and will progress between the 4 phases of the game when you complete them. Phase 0 is the tutorial, which teaches you about oxygen, switching cameras, and repairing rooms. Phase 1 enables the enemy at a low AI value and requires you to repair 50% of available rooms. Phase 2 needs you to finish repairing the rooms while the enemy becomes more aggressive, and finally in Phase 3, you have to repair the escape pod while the enemy is even more aggressive. Some important notes about the escape pod is that because the button to view is further away from the others, switching to and from it on cameras is more difficult. Additionally, it has the slowest repair rate in the game, making this the most difficult portion of the game. Once you finish Phase 3, it will display the windscreen, but at first I just put the jump scare animation in there as a test. I updated this to have its own animation, which is just an altered version of the oxygen death scream, but it plays slower, displaying "you win" on the monitor and sends you to the main menu instead of the death menu. With the game now fully playable, it's time to add a final layer of polish before I publish it. In the case of balance, oxygen was tweaked, the enemy's move times are now less varied to be more consistent, the enemy aggression values for each phase were lowered, repair speed was lowered. For more ambient stuff, the enemy has a low chance to play a banging sound when you block it with the vent, and the idle sound was updated because it was pretty bad before. With that all done, it's time to upload the game to the jam. Just one problem. I don't have a name. After spending way too much time trying to think of one, I ended up going with Deep Space, because Dead Space was already taken. All in all, I'm pretty proud of this game. I think it definitely would have benefited from a larger variety of rooms and more than one enemy, but the short length minimizes this issue. It also, at the end of the day, is a pretty shameless ripoff of Five Nights at Freddy's, but I do think the additions of more real-time oriented gameplay and removal of Dead Space, god that would have been such a good name, between actions does shake up the feel a little. For only being made in 1 week, it isn't too shabby. Anyways, the link is in the description, go play the game. I don't feel like writing an outro, so see you, I guess.